I am friends with Tucker Carlson. I should probably lead with that. You should know before we start playing clips of this whole thing that we are friends. We got to know each other a few years ago. We see eye to eye on many, many things. I respect him, and we've always been friends. And so he invited me to come on his new show and sit down and have a discussion. We discussed many, many things. We discussed the border. We discussed liberal white women. We discussed the failure of Republicans. Look, all you need to know is I was extremely brilliant, extremely witty, and, it was a whole lot of things like this.
It's not an accident, as you well know. You talk about this all the time. It's not an accident what's happening on the border. The people who lead the nation from the federal level, that's Democrat politicians, half the Republican politicians, every bureaucrat, they are encouraging flooding the border with illegals. They're encouraging it. That's just what they want. They want America full of illegals, no loyalty to America, criminals, rapists, murderers. That is what they want, because when you cause violence and chaos in a society, that's the fertile soil where communism grows. People will always turn to the government and beg them for help when that kind of societal collapse comes. So they know this. So they're inviting it. Well, other countries around the world are obliging, as countries always have in this situation. Hey, there's a country I don't particularly like. They have an open border. We do have this prison full of rapists. Hey, guys, why don't you just move on to America? We know this is happening in countries like Venezuela, where they're emptying prisons onto the border. We don't have criminals coming here individually. We have entire criminal networks coming here. The country is being undone now, and it cannot be reversed what's happening right now. I want everyone to understand this. Let's say everyone gets their wish and Donald Trump beats Joe Biden in November and woohoo! You cannot possibly, it's not humanly possible to deport this many people. If Joe Biden's going to bring in 10, 12 million people, almost all of them will be here permanently, and all of their children will be American citizens. And there's not going to be some mass deportation, no matter what people say on the campaign trail. The American people have no stomach for that whatsoever. Even if they think they do right now, it would be one video of a little boy crying as mommy gets thrown in the back of a paddy wagon to be deported, and all deportations would stop. Republicans would grab their ankles for the media like they always do, and everything, well, we need to do this more humanely. So that's the situation we're in. We cannot stand by and watch the United States of America be destroyed. And people have to understand how dire this situation is. This is the stated policy now of the Democrat Party. So even if Joe Biden gets bounced in 2024, woohoo, we get some deportations in. The next time there's any Democrat president, it'll again be open season, and the entire world will know. Criminals, drugs, rapists, everything flooding into the country to destroy it. The time is now to create a coalition in a totally separate immigration force. That's what we have to do.
Obviously, clips are making the rounds for a bunch of different reasons. I realize that's quite a thing to say. You've heard me say this on the show. It has to be done. We can't hope. Hope is not a plan. We have to save our way of life. These things need to be done, and they need to be done now. And so in response to that, a lot of people will say, understandably, well, Jesse, let's get some guns and we'll go down to the border. It's not going to work. That is not how we're going to save this place. We will need some level of state power to save it. Here it was.
And let's just be honest. I mean, obviously, I'm fervently rooting for Trump over Biden for many, many reasons. But Trump was president for 4 years, and he didn't even build a defensive border wall. Didn't. And I don't care. We can lie about that, but that's just a fact. So the idea that he's going to deport 10 million people is just don't lie to me. I'm sick of it. So I agree with you completely.
Look, I mean, not to interrupt, but along those same lines, Tucker, sorry, but people have to do also remember child separation policy? That's a basic border policy, because people grab kids who aren't theirs and act like, hey, I'm Dad Pedro, and when really he's not, he's some kind of cartel member. And so you always separate the kid and figure out, is he there with mom or dad? That's a basic border policy. Look, again, insult or don't insult, I don't give a crap if people are offended by it. The Trump administration ended that policy because of media and Democrat pressure. Democrats did a bunch of photo ops down on the border. AOC's crying at the fence. Eventually, child separation was ended. That's because of media pressure. And people in this country honestly believe there's going to be some mass deportation of 8 million people where you're rounding up entire families and shipping them back to Zimbabwe. You're outside of your mind. It'll never happen. The people have no stomach for it, and neither does the Republican Party.
Why is it that Republican states tend to have the least sincere Republican? Like Dan Crenshaw, apparently still a member of Congress from the state of Texas, who has zero interest in the U.S. border. All his interest is in the Ukrainian border, the Gaza border. How does a guy like that get elected in a supposedly Republican state?
Well, complacency and life being good makes us soft, right? It's just the fact of life. It's one of those things humanity struggled with. As soon as you get rich or well off or comfortable, how do you keep improving? How do you keep your edge? You rarely do. This is what's happened to red state Republicans. There's nobody more at fault for the condition of this country than red state GOP voters. And people get mad when I say that. But let me just go down the list here. Mitch McConnell, John Cornyn, John Thune, Tillis. I mean, look, you can go down the list. Every dork from Louisiana. The reddest states in this country give us the most putrid Republicans at the federal level. Why does that happen? Because the GOP primary voter in red states lives in a relatively normal place. He lives in comfort. He thinks he's got a red legislature. So he either doesn't vote in primaries. That's mostly the case. He's just going to sit at home. Or even worse, he goes to vote for Senator Dork, who he sees on Fox News every time. Well, Lindsey Graham was on Fox tonight. I guess he's on my side. You should have nothing but disdain for virtually every single senator you see on Fox News. And yet people vote for who they see on television. Well, I met John Thune once and he was so handsome. He's very clearly on our side. John Thune supported gun control legislation, and John Thune on camera was asked to back up American people owning AR-15s, and the best argument he could make for your liberty, for the Second Amendment, was that, I kid you not, this is on camera, he told people, well, I mean, a lot of people use them to shoot prairie dogs. These are the weapons-grade losers who control the GOP, and they're from the reddest states. Susan Collins is understandable, Tucker. Sorry to get all fired up. It's understandable. She's from Maine. It's from a blue state. Of course, we're going to get some wishy-washy, mealy-mouthed dork from that kind of state. For the Dakotas? The Dakotas are so red, it's crazy. They could have somebody to the right of me if they wanted to, but they don't. Well, I saw him on Fox last night. Oh, just gag me with a fork.
And so we need state power. We need help. We need help from the red states. They are the only thing that can form a coherent immigration policy. All right, that's our side. Let's set that aside because I do want to show you this. The liberal white woman. I brought this up before. Whenever you look at these dirty commies, Joe Biden, any of them, when they give speeches and you're sitting there screaming at the television and pulling your hair out, and it seems like they're speaking to a different species, it's because they are. They're speaking to the true power of the Democrat Party, the real destroyers of Western civilization, these single liberal white women. And here was Tucker and I discussing them specifically.
I had the wildest conversation, I forgot to tell you about this, with this lady. I won't go into details. We were in this big group setting, and there were Republicans there, Democrats there. It was vacation. We ended up at this big table, like 10 people at this table, having a couple cocktails after dinner, just talking about life. And there were these two liberal white women from Chicago. And they loved their mayor, Brandon Johnson, loved him. They actually referenced him as BJ, was his name, right? BJ, I'm not kidding you not, they kept calling him BJ. I mean, like he's Kamala Harris or something like that. It was BJ this and BJ that. But I kept my mouth shut, Tucker, believe it or not. I know no one's going to believe that. I just sat there and listened and just watched and just listened as these people were talking. Well, there was this oil field guy from Texas. You love this guy, just total cowboy, red America, the great, all this. And he wasn't holding back. And he finally challenges this woman about the crime in Chicago. And he says to her, you talk about BJ this and Chicago's great that. Look at these murder numbers and it's a disaster. And you got people taking over Union Square. It's crazy. How can you defend it? And Tucker, on my life, crossed my heart and hope to die. This lady looked him right in the eye and she said, well, yeah, if you come to Chicago, you might get robbed, but you're not going to be targeted. That was her explanation. Well, yeah, you might get robbed here, but they're not going to target you for assassination. Why are you complaining? Chicago's wonderful. In her mind, that was a good explanation. People do not understand how sick the mind of the liberal white woman is, and they don't understand that that is the true beating heart of the Democrat Party today. I'm not even actually trying to be mean about this. It's why they talk to them. Do people know that married women vote Republican? Married women vote Republican, married men vote Republican, single men vote Republican, but it's something like 77% of single women vote Democrat, and the majority, over 58% of those women have been diagnosed with mental illness. Single, miserable women who are clinically insane are the beating heart of the Democrat Party. And that's why these people do the things they do. And that's why they do what they do when it comes to illegal immigration, because single white women view illegal immigration like rescuing dogs who've been abused. Oh, sure, everybody just come into my country. Please rape anyone you want. Of course, that's the right thing to do. No love of country, just sitting there popping her anti-anxiety medication as she destroys Western civilization. That's the truth.
I don't think you get the credit for being as deep and insightful as you are.
I am deep and insightful, aren't I? I know you're upset about the impeachment thing today. In case you're just now turning on the television, there's supposed to be an impeachment trial in the Senate. Chuck Schumer, big cheese in the Senate, said, nah, we're not going to do that. And everyone on the right is very upset about this today. Look, I'm not telling you not to be upset. It's evil, it's bad, it's wrong, it's all those things. However, I will tell you this, and I really don't mean this to be insulting, but I'm rude, so it's probably going to come off as insulting. If you're really upset that they're not going to have an impeachment trial, maybe you're a little naive. I'll just say it this way. When people have been screaming about this all day, this is what I've heard, two different things. I've heard, well, he has to, the Constitution. I've heard that. And I've heard, what a hypocrite Chuck Schumer is. He just said, he's on camera from a couple years ago saying we have to have a trial. He's a hypocrite. Again, I'm not trying to be mean. That's a little naive. No one cares about the Constitution anymore. You may love it. I love it. It's a wonderful document. Every time you bring up the Constitution, you sound like a child. And I'm not insulting you. I'm not insulting the Constitution. I'm really not. It's a childish notion because Chuck Schumer, the other side, they don't care about it. If they don't care about it, in fact, if they hate it, if they have no use for it, then it goes from being this wonderful document that guarantees freedoms to just not a piece of paper. It means nothing. It means nothing. Of course, he didn't care about the Constitution. And no, he doesn't care about hypocrisy either. These people don't stress those things. That's what people on the right stress. Well, I don't want to be a hypocrite. Are we doing things the right way? Well, we can't become a monster. Communists don't think in these terms. Why do you think? I told you that this was going to happen, didn't I? Remember what I said? I came right here on the show, and I told you that if they actually have an impeachment trial, that I will shave in a Fu Manchu mustache. When I went home and told my wife that, she freaked out. She said, you better not. And I said, honey, don't worry. Trust me. There's not going to be an impeachment trial. Now, why did I know that? Because I understand exactly what we're dealing with here. I know who these people are. Stop with these notions of hypocrisy or the Constitution. Those days are in the past. Sad, but they're in the past. We're in a whole different ball game now. We're in a power ball game, which brings us to Mike Johnson. Now, Mike Johnson, before he became Speaker of the House, was rock solid. Mike Johnson's been on this show. Remember when he came out and said this?
The greatest threat to us at the end of the day is our nation's debt. And so we have to get serious about this. You need adults in the room to advance the cutting, the limiting of government and getting it back down in its size and scope. And that's what these fights are about. They're worthwhile fights. They have to be done. And again, it's messy sometimes, but that's our process. That's how it works.
And today, more foreign aid, more money for them, more money for them, more money for them, no border security, no money for you, because now he's Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson. Again, I'm angry about it, but I knew this was coming too. One side is fighting, the other is laying down. If we are going to take this country back, we are not going to do it from Washington, D.C., not from Congress, not from the White House. It's just not going to happen. Are you politically involved? You're probably answering yes, you're politically involved. How politically involved are you? Is it just watching I'm Right every night? Not that I want you to stop doing that. Do you maybe have a MAGA hat? Not that I want you to stop doing that. I'm voting Trump. Not that I want you to stop doing that. But is that the extent of your political involvement? I'm going to explain something just very briefly because we're going to move on. We have so much else we need to talk to. But This country will not be saved from Washington. It won't be saved by Congress. It won't be saved by Trump in the White House. It's not possible. It's too broken. It's too corrupt. It's too gone. But this country can be saved by you. If we would engage, we can save the country. And let me explain. Do you know why there's a drag queen story hour in red towns all across the United States of America? Do you understand why, the real reason why? Because the communists are politically involved. We think we are, but they actually are. We vote for president once every 4 years. We post on social media, I love Trump. But do you go to school board meetings? Do you get on your city parks department? City council? When's the next committee meeting in your town? Your town has one, I promise you, a commission, a committee meeting. When is the next one? Do you even know? All this information is publicly available. The communist does know. He'll be at those meetings. He'll be filling your committee. I know you have a 10,000 person town. And Jesse, you don't understand. We're fine here. There's only 20 communists here. Yes, but the 20 communists are all the ones in power. There is a difference, a monumental difference between majority and power. Those are two totally opposite things. The right thinks they're the same. They are not. Now, that's the bad news. The good news is you can take back that power. The soft underbelly of communism in the United States of America is their hold on local politics. They took your school board, they took your city council, they're on the committees, they're on the commissions, they're in the parks department, but they're so safe there. They feel so safe because you never got involved before. But what if tonight on the way home from work, instead of driving by City Hall, what if you pulled in, found out when the next public meeting was, made a plan, you, 10 friends to show up? What if that is how we save the United States of America? Because that is. You know that? Get involved. That's how we'll save the country. Actually involved. You know what Solzhenitsyn called communists? Solzhenitsyn, you of course know who Solzhenitsyn was. He was the citizen of the Soviet Union, spent some time in the gulags, wrote, of course, the books Gulag Archipelago. He was well acquainted with communists. But you know what he called them? I always thought this was so fascinating when I would read his stuff when I was younger. He called them the enemies of humanity. The enemies of humanity. It's quite a thing to put out there, right? But the more and more you read about these people, the more you find out about them, the more you find out they really are anti-humans. They're anti-humanity. Have you ever noticed that to the communists, every problem is a problem you can silence or kill your way out of? It doesn't matter what it is. Modern American communists are the exact same way. Have you ever spent any time with one of these climate change types or seen enough video on these climate change types? They normally don't lead with this, but in the end, they'll just flat out tell you, well, I mean, a couple billion people kind of need to die. Just tell you that. Well, there's a problem. It wouldn't be a problem if, what's that woman's name? Jane Goodall. She said, well, about 90% of the people on earth need to go away. 90% gone. See, there's a problem. It wouldn't be a problem if a bunch of people would just die. Now, why are they this way? Well, here's really the fundamental difference between you and your liberal Aunt Peggy, between you and a communist. The difference is you are pro-humanity, pro-human being. Whatever your value system is, whatever your belief system is, you understand every single person is a unique person with a unique purpose. And they're a person who should be free and should live and should thrive and succeed and fail and do all the things we human beings do. But to the communist doesn't share your value system, so the communist doesn't feel that. They really are anti-humans. Did you hear Bill Maher? I should credit him for his honesty. Did you hear Bill Maher and his thoughts on abortion?
Not if you believe it's murder. You know, that's why I don't understand the 15-week thing. Or the Trump's plan is, let's leave it to the states. You mean, so killing babies is okay in some states? Like, I can respect the absolutist position. I really can. I scold the left on when they say, oh, you know what? They just hate women. People who aren't pro-life, pro-choice. They don't hate women. They just made that up. They think it's murder. And it kind of is. I'm just okay with that. I am. I mean, there's 8 billion people in the world. I'm sorry, we won't miss you. That's my position on it. What?
That's quite harsh, Bill.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not
Is
sure you're
that
gonna
not
get
your
much-
position if you're pro-choice?
Isn't that mainly because you don't like children? I mean,
Yeah,
No,
exactly.
no. I mean, but if you are, you said you're pro-choice. That's your position too.
I credit his honesty. And look, that's how your liberal Aunt Peggy feels too. I know it's murder. You know they're all lying about that, right? But when they use pro-choice or reproductive rights or whatever words they use to lie about it, there's a reason they're lying about it, because they understand it's murder too. Everyone knows it's murder. Everyone knows that's a baby, a poor, defenseless, unborn baby. Everyone knows it's alive. Everyone knows you go in and snip its head off and piecemeal its body out of there and throw it in the trash can, that it's murder. The truth is, half of our society, at least, is okay with it. I actually am not even angry with Bill Maher. I want to give him credit for finally being honest. Your liberal Aunt Peggy will never be that honest. These communists, as their demonic ways of thinking get more and more mainstream, are getting more and more saying these kinds of things publicly. You see this woman on TikTok?
I like to think of my uterus as the deep end of a pool at a water park. No children allowed, but if they end up there, they die.
I'm not even angry. It's sad. Let's discuss the human element. FISA. Okay, so what's going on right now in Congress with FISA? Here's what you need to know. Here's the 30,000-foot view of what you need to know. What they're debating right now is, does the government need a warrant to accidentally get your data? And this is what I mean. Well, technically, the government needs a warrant to spy on you, to look at your text messages, your emails. If you're at, let's say, the FBI, you can't just say, wow, Susie looks pretty suspicious. Hey, let's read her text messages. You're not allowed to do that, technically. FISA has been a way they've been doing that for a long time, and here's how it works. This gives them the authority to spy on foreign nationals, foreign terrorists, or potential terrorists. You see, you don't need a warrant if you're in the FBI to read some dude's emails from Iran. So what happens if you swap an email with this guy, a text message with this guy? Remember, it doesn't have to be someone you know is a terrorist. You could be dealing with buying some special wallpaper from Paris, or who knows. And the FBI happens to be monitoring this guy, reading his text messages, and they get yours. Well, hey, look at this. Look what Susie said. Hey, we better open up a file on Susie. Backdoor spying on Americans. It is a violation of your civil rights. You, and I know this country has no concept of this anymore. I very much saw that during COVID, that the American people don't understand this. But you understand, I know this sounds basic, so just stay with me. You understand that you're supposed to be free, right? Free. You were blessed by God to be born in America, the land of the free, the land where there are strict limits on what the government, including law enforcement, can and cannot do to you. You are a free citizen. You do not live in a dictatorship. They should never be able to look at your stuff without permission, ever. And so let's talk about the GOP. Because listen, I'm trying not to be a cynic. I don't want to be Debbie Downer, but let me just give it to you. I know we've had some successes with the FISA stuff over the past few days. Just before the weekend, they got it stalled. All this is great news. Now there's another vote. All this stuff's going to go through again. I'll give you the good news first. The good news is it was more difficult for them to pass this time than it ever has been in the past. Once it's all done and passed, I mean, have been more difficult this time than it ever was in the past. That's a good thing. That means we're moving in the right direction and we're dragging these useless losers in the GOP in the right direction. Now, why do we fail? Well, there's something we forget. On top of regular GOP weakness and whatnot, we do forget about something I call a lot the human element. You see, Mike Johnson, Speaker of the House Mike Johnson, has infamously been against this kind of warrantless spying on Americans for really all of his career. Well, now he's Speaker of the House, and he's out there whipping up votes to pass the thing. And here was Mike Johnson when he's asked, hey, why the change of heart?
When I was a member of the judiciary, I saw all the abuses of the FBI, the terrible abuses over and over and over, the hundreds of thousands of abuses. And then when I became Speaker, I went to the SCIF and got the confidential briefing from sort of the other perspective on that to understand the necessity of Section 702 of FISA and how important it is for national security. And it gave me a different perspective. So I encourage all the members to go to the classified briefing and hear all that and see it so they can evaluate the situation for themselves. And I think some opinions have changed both ways, but that's part of the process. You got to be fully informed.
Have you been Excuse me.
Yeah. My entire career, I was against this whole FISA thing. Man, that's dangerous, illegal, spying. But now that I became Speaker, I went to a classified briefing. And phew, if you knew the things I know, you'd want that FISA to go through. That's what he said. Okay, so what are we dealing with here? Well, I don't know for sure, and you don't know for sure, but I do know a couple things. One, let's just get the obvious maybe out of the way first. Maybe Mike Johnson is compromised in some way. We don't know. This happens very regularly to politicians in America, around the world, and all throughout history, so don't act like this is some crazy conspiracy theory. Intelligence agencies, law enforcement agencies, especially ones like ours that hoover up a lot of our data, a lot of our information, they end up finding out that everyone is a criminal or has things that they're not proud of in their background. And that is how they have infamously throughout history controlled many, many, many politicians. Is that what happened here? No, I don't have any idea about that. I have no inside knowledge. I don't know. Could have. Did Mike Johnson walk in there and some FBI guys say, hey, Mike, you know how you were against FISA? Hey, we need you to vote yes on this. Otherwise, Mike, I mean, we've got these pictures here. Remember that time you were out of town? We got these pictures. I'd hate for these pictures to get to the LA Times. So, Mike, vote our way. Did that happen? I have no idea. But it happens. It definitely does. Could have happened here. I don't know. But the more likely thing that happened is the human element portion of this. This is, in case you're wondering why these GOP types end up selling us out to the deep state over and over and over again. Why does this happen so consistently? Well, here's how they get you. Remember, Mike Johnson, GOP leadership, all of them. As much as we despise them and get frustrated with them, they are flesh and blood, human beings, just like you, just like me. They are. And to us, they can turn into TV characters, right? It's just someone you see on your TV, but they're flesh and blood people. Mike Johnson's a dude. How do these deep state types get their stuff through? Well, they ham up these meetings and these briefings. They know exactly what they're doing. They have all these binders there. Wow, FBI. They'll bring it. I guarantee you. I would bet my mortgage on this that they brought in a specialist who deals with terrorism, counterterrorism, something cool like that. Some title. Hey, Mike Johnson. This is me, Officer Jerkwater, Counterterrorism Division. Let me tell you about ISIS and what they're potentially doing in your town next week. And they get you in this classified briefing and you feel super important and the walls are soundproof and there's armed guards at the door and they tell you, there's a terrorist attack coming. Look, everybody isn't privy to this, only you are. But I want you to open up your super secret binder, turn to page 12, paragraph E. This was presented by Super Ninja Delta Force Special Agent Mike Counterterrorism Johnson. And then he says, whoa, man, I had no idea. Wow, we're going to be attacked next week? Geez, you guys need FISA. This is how they get our guys many, 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 many times. Sometimes they are compromised. Sometimes they are. Sometimes it's just a matter of these police agencies and intelligence agencies, FBI, CIA types, They understand how to make themselves look critically important. After all, these agencies, their entire livelihood depends on members of Congress stroking them huge taxpayer-funded checks so they can do what they do. What they want from you is a check with no accountability. That's what they want from you. How do they get the check? And how do they get the lack of accountability? You go sit Mike Johnson down in a secret classified briefing and tell him how important he is and how dire the situation is.